Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channels. We have another power rankings video. If you clicked on the video, you already know we are power ranking every team in the SEC going into the summer here of 2025. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, that would be greatly appreciated. More on that later in the video. But without further ado, let's just dive right in. Okay, as we work our way up to the top, we start at the bottom. We got to start somewhere, and we're going to start with the Mississippi State Bulldogs here as they kick off this power ranking. As really, this is where most people have the Bulldogs dead last, and I'm sorry to say it because I really do like that environment down there. Last season, they went an abysmal 2-10, 0-8 in the SEC. Them and Purdue were the two worst teams in the Power Four by far. Their Mississippi State's recruiting class is the SEC's weakest. They were just gutted with portal losses and starting quarterback Michael Van Buren, a couple starting wide receivers in Kevin Coleman Jr. and Mario Craver, etc. In addition to that, they lost much of the starting secondary to the portal as well. They got a fully healthy quarterback back in Blake Shapen and returning running back Davon Booth. They both return, and they will both play a huge part of the offense. But Coach Jeff Alebi's offense struggled immensely in 2024, failing to win an SEC game, like I just said. Defensively, the team's leading tackler, safety Isaac Smith, and their third leading tackler, linebacker Nick Mitchell, will return with valuable experience, but the unit as a whole needs major improvement after a porous 2024. Their defense is bolstered by a couple main transfers, namely Red Hibbler at edge and Dwight Lewis at free safety, but depth does remain a colossal concern, in my opinion. Their schedule is definitely one of the easier ones in the SEC, but a fairly challenging one. Mississippi State's ranking at the bottom here reflects how, they're still a rebuilding program with questions just up and down the depth chart. Even their best players, I have questions about players like Blake Shapen at quarterback. And I'm not excited about this team at all, and thus they start at the bottom of the SEC. All right, next up here we have Arkansas at 15. Arkansas, I think that Sam Pittman at head coach is not doing a good job, and I think that most Arkansas fans would tell you that. Don't get me wrong, I want him to succeed just as most people want him to, but he just flat out needs to do a better job. This is going to be his sixth season at Arkansas, and he hasn't broken through really at all. Only 7 starters returned to this team, most notably of which is dual threat quarterback Taylen Green, who's a very exciting quarterback with a turnover problem as he threw 9 interceptions last season and lost 4 out of 9 fumbles. Transfers were abundant for the Razorbacks over the offseason as they got Omega Blake at wide receiver, 4-star tackle Corey Robinson, and 4-star corner Julian Neal. They will definitely help, but the losses, in my opinion, were greater than the additions, and a big reason why Arkansas is so low on this power ranking. They lost running back 1, Jaquindon Jackson, who's the team's leading rusher, both Metcalf brothers, who are big in the secondary, leading tight end Luke Hayes, and leading wide receiver Andrew Armstrong, who left for the NFL, and starting center Patrick Kutas transferred to Ole Miss. I just don't believe that they will have a stronger team in 2025 because of all these losses. The secondary was a huge liability last season, and the secondary was gutted in the offseason, namely those Metcalf brothers, but others, of course. And shifting to the offense here a little bit, Bobby Petrino is in his second year as the OC, and I think that could really help kickstart Taylen Green. I think that he could really help some stuff out on that front, but the depth chart is super thin, and their 2025 schedule, which features Texas, Ole Miss, and LSU, is daunting. If Green develops, solves his turnover problems, or at least minimizes it, and Petrino's system clicks, Arkansas could outperform expectations, but their roster turnover and 2024 inconsistencies suggest a lower tier finish, in my opinion. Coach Sam Pittman faces pressure to deliver early as the pressure continues to increase for him in his 6th year, like we said, at the program. Arkansas overall needs significant improvement to climb these SEC rankings. Next up, we have Kentucky here at 14, and I like Kentucky, but Kentucky underwent a terrible season last year, finishing 4-8. It was objectively a terrible season for a once dominant program, and Mark Stoops has to do better, or at least make a bowl game in 2025. That should at least be the expectation. The portal was overall a very mixed bag, in my opinion, for the Cats, as they brought in a couple capable starters, such as 7th-year transfer quarterback Zach Calzada, who will most likely start for the Cats. Running back Dante Dowdell from Nebraska. She has Pete at tackle, Kendrick Law at wide receiver from Bama, and 3 4-star defensive linemen, which is great. But however, they did lose many important pieces, such as wide receivers Barian Brown and Dane Key, the 1-2 punch at wide receiver from last season, who was very good, And the defense was a huge struggle in 2025. They let by 255 passing yards per game, and I really do not see much improvement outside of a slightly better D line. Their depth chart lacks depth after losing starters, and the 2025 schedule, which features Georgia, Tennessee, and Florida, is unforgiving. Coach Mark Stoops' program is trending downward, in my opinion. But if Zach Calzada can stabilize the offense and the defense improves, big if, Kentucky could definitely climb and make a bowl game, but their current trajectory and roster gaps suggest a lower tier finish. Stoops' experience provides hope, but significant improvement is needed in order to compete in the SEC. Okay, now at 13 here, we have the Vanderbilt Commodores. Their surprising 2024 season, going 6-6, 3-5 in the SEC, offers hope here for the 2025 season, and I think that they have a good chance of making it back to another 500 season. Returning quarterback, 7th year, Diego Pavia raised eyebrows last season after just balling out and helping secure multiple key wins, most notably of which, of course, was against Bama, and an OT win against Virginia Tech. I see some people have him as a top 10 quarterback in the league. Frankly, I do not get that, but I understand that he's a darn good quarterback who is more than capable of leading the offense. Right now, I just put him at probably a top 25 quarterback in the nation. They return one of the best tight ends in the country with Eli Stowers returning. He led the team in receiving last year with over 630 yards, highly regarded as one of the best in the country. One of the big reasons that I have them low on this power ranking is because they did not use the portal very effectively at all, in my opinion. It was third to last in the SEC and outside the top 35. The defense, led by linebackers Brian Longwell and Langston Patterson, is among the SEC's most improved. However, only 7 returning starters and a tough schedule limit their ceiling, in my opinion. Offensive depth behind Pavia and Stowers is a concern for me, especially on the O-line. Pavia's magic, experience, and star power gives Vanderbilt an edge over lower tier teams, and even some teams that will come up in the near future here at 12, 11, and 10. But their depth chart suggests that they'll struggle mightily against the elite competition. Don't get me wrong, I think that they can pull one or two of those higher tier elite games out of their hat. They definitely can upset a lot of people out there. I just find it highly improbable that they will. If Pavia continues to overperform, Vanderbilt could surprise again, but their roster constraints cap their potential. I expect them to compete in many games, such as when they play Missouri, Auburn, and Tennessee. Again, all teams that are ranked ahead of them. I expect them to really compete and possibly take 2 out of 3 out of those 3. And overall, this should be a very fun team to monitor. Don't get me wrong, but in terms of power rankings here, I don't think I can put them past these teams that will be coming up. All right, up next we have the Missouri Tigers here. Missouri's here at 12, and this may seem low, but I think that is credited to how deep the SEC is, as I think the Tigers will have a decent season. I think that they will take a slight step back on offense as Brady Cook and Luther Burden left, and that is a duo that carried the offense for much of the season. And I'm not high on transfer quarterback Bu Pribula, as most people are. I think that he's going to struggle for a time, definitely to get assimilated to starting every game and playing in the SEC in general, where he is not used to playing. Let's just say that transferring in from Penn State, I'm just really not that high on him as a quarterback, a starting quarterback that is at Missouri. I could be definitely wrong, and I want him to succeed, but I just personally don't see all the hype around him. Okay, so now what they have going for them is the transfer portal, which they placed third in the SEC, top 10 overall. Edge Damon Wilson was the headliner, as he was one of 3 5-star players in the portal. He is an absolute stud, transferring in from Bama. They tried to get a replacement for Luther Burden in Kevin Coleman Jr. Now, will he be a replacement? I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm sure he'll do great. But will he be Luther Burden? I'm not sure. They got one of the best running backs in the portal in Ahmad Hardy, which is huge for them. I really like Ahmad Hardy. If you've seen my top 5 running backs video, I have a full breakdown of him there. Because, yes, I think he's one of the top 5 running backs in the country. So go there if you want to hear more about him or my analysis of him. Overall, the 2025 schedule avoids Georgia and Texas, but does include challenges in Bama, Texas A&M, and South Carolina. Coach Eli Drinkwitz's transfer additions aim to maintain an offensive spark. But defensive consistency is a concern, as I have concerns with the secondary and linebackers on defense. If Pribula adapts quickly, that's a big if. Missouri could stay competitive in a lot of these games. But the roster turnover and just frankly my concerns suggest a slight step back. Yet I think that they will have a successful season and be around that 7 to 9 win mark again, as their schedule isn't the worst in the world. Okay, so now we have Oklahoma here at 11, and Oklahoma is a true wild card in my opinion. They could be top 10 good. They could be top 7 in the SEC in my opinion if the cards are played right, but I'm taking a more conservative approach here, and I think this is where a lot of people have them in this Missouri, we got Auburn coming up, Tennessee coming up, Florida. I think that they're in this range of teams in my opinion. Last year was obviously an abject disaster for Oklahoma, and everyone acknowledges that. Um, they tried to rebuild the roster via the portal, and they were pretty successful with that, getting a top 15 class in the country. Obviously, the crown jewel of that class is transfer quarterback John Mateer, who just balled out at Washington State. And running back transfer Jaden Ott he boosted the offense tremendously. They got really good pieces for the defense in Marvin Jones Jr., and they also like returning wide receiver Deion Burks. He's a stud. Now that's the good news for the roster. Now, why I'm holding back on this Oklahoma team in essence here is, they lost one of the best wide receivers in football in Nick Anderson and Bauer Sharp. Plus, I'm still unsure about John Mateer's ability to throw the ball effectively. Having a lower tier wide receiver room certainly won't help. The Oklahoma's depth chart is thin after losing 15 starters, and their 2024 schedule is just brutal. But before we get to the schedule, one more word on the actual roster is that the offensive line was truly a struggle last season, and I don't think that they did enough to really retool this offensive line. They needed to do a full rebuild of this offensive line, in my opinion, and they did not do such, or at least didn't do it effectively, in my opinion. So getting like Jaden Ott at running back was really nice, but if they could have went out and got a stud tackle or a stud guard instead, I feel like that would offer more of a chance for more close wins, because the offensive line in the trenches is where the game is played. So that's a little aside there. But the schedule is just brutal. And in particular, the last 7 games of the season where they played Texas, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Bama, Mizzou, and LSU all in a row. Coach Brent Venables added offensive staff to support Mateer in Mateer's old offensive coordinator at Washington State. But the offensive line, like I said, needs improvement. I think their saving grace will be Mateer's dual threat ability, and if he pans out, it could elevate them big time. If the offensive line somehow scraps it together and plays decently and Mateer adapts to the SEC, Oklahoma could outperform expectations, but their 2024 inconsistencies and roster losses, I think, warrant a cautious outlook for 2025. But still, I think that they will make a bowl game. I think that they have the capacity to get to 9 or 10 wins this season. I think that they have that capacity. I think their floor is about 5 wins. All right, at number 10 here, we have the Tennessee Volunteers. Oh, Rocky Top. I'm going to be honest. I think that Tennessee is going to have a down year as they come in at number 10 in these power rankings. Significant, and I'm talking significant losses from last season highlight my main reason why I think that they're so low. Last season was more of a magical season than anything. They had a bunch of really savvy vets. They had a stud quarterback. They had everything going for them, and they went 10-2 before walking into a buzzsaw in Ohio State. But the departure of running back Dylan Sampson and Edge James Pierce hurts big time, and there's no two ways about it. Tennessee fans, losing those two guys hurt you really bad. Especially since Pierce generated most of the pressures on that Tennessee defensive line with, I think it was, 8 sacks, and was just a game wrecker, while the offense was fueled through Sampson, who ran for over 1,300 yards, and starting quarterback Nico Iamaleava also departed after that NIL snafu. I have a whole video on that. I'm not going to go into that. And while the offense was run heavy, he made some incredible throws last season, namely in the Bama game, which his throws single-handedly won them that Bama game and beyond. Everything that he did put them in the playoffs. If they don't have Nico Iamaleava, they don't win some of those games, and they don't make the playoff. Nico was certainly a part of that team that helped them get into the playoff, and losing him was big. The portal was the enemy big time in Knoxville, as Josh Heupel did not do great at all with retaining talent, and part of that was preparing for the college football playoff. I get that, but just speaking objectively here, he did not bring in the talent necessary, in my opinion, to compete for the top spot here, as they lost players who played significant snaps, such as wide receiver Squirrel White and DB Jacoby Thomas, for example. And they did not bring in a player that will even start in the portal save, Joey Aguilar, very late. Offensively, I think that they will struggle, plain and simple. The offensive line is young, with true freshman David Sanders Jr. starting. Now, we just saw a true freshman start in Jordan Seaton at Colorado, and he played pretty well for all things considered, but it took a game or two for him to settle in, especially in that Nebraska game. David Sanders did not play, not David Sanders, excuse me. But y'all get the point. David Sanders, I think he'll struggle to start for probably the first 2 or 3 games, but then I think he'll settle in nicely and be the 5-star plus talent that he is. They downgraded at quarterback, running back, and wide receiver from last year. That's objectively true. And I'm not saying that they're going to be incompetent on offense. I think that they will do just fine. I think that Joey Aguilar is a more than competent quarterback, but he darn sure isn't Nico Iamaleava, in my opinion. I just think that the offense will be down compared to last year. Defensively, they were really good last year, and they retained many starters, so that's a good sign, and that's why I don't have them all the way down. I have them right here in the middle because their defense is going to be really good. They retained a lot of starters, very good sign, and that's what sets them apart from everyone else so far set on this list. Linebacker Arian Carter, DB Andre Turrentine, and corner Boo Carter solidify this solid unit. In 2025, their schedule includes an early test against Syracuse. That is a big game. If Tennessee wants to compete, they got to beat Syracuse. And in SEC play against Georgia, Bama, Florida, and Oklahoma, that'll be challenging as well. Tennessee could definitely climb, but their roster gaps and tough schedule temper expectations, in my opinion. Next up at number 9 here, a little bit of an upstart, the Auburn Tigers, and I'm cautiously optimistic about them this upcoming season. It all starts and ends at the quarterback position, and that is what broke them last season, as Peyton Thorne was not it at quarterback. They finished 5-7. You can ask any Auburn fan, last year was not the standard, and like I said, it starts and ends at quarterback. This year they got the highly talented Oklahoma reject Jackson Arnold to transfer in, and he was very much down last year. And mind you, last year was not all his fault, as we discussed with Oklahoma, as there were a lot of problems with that Oklahoma offense. Nevertheless, he had a down year and got benched. And looking forward to this year, he still has a great arm and he can still run it really well. So I think that those are good signs. He's still a talented quarterback. So if Auburn can give him a QB friendly system and work some magic with the receivers, we'll be talking about them in a minute, I think that he could resurrect his career here. Their transfer portal class overall was great. Top 5 in the SEC, top 10 nationally. Wide receiver Eric Singleton Jr. was one of the best available wide receivers in the portal, so he was a huge get. And I'm a huge fan of this wide receiver room in general. I think it's one of the strongest in the SEC and probably one of the strongest in the country. They got the aforementioned Eric Singleton, pair him with Cam Coleman on the outside with Malcolm Simmons in the slot, and 4-star transfer Horatio Fields rotating in. Are you kidding me? Unstoppable. Switching gears. I am not I am not sure if I fully trust the O-line or not, because they were not good last year. But they did help solidify it by getting Xavier Chaplin and Mason Murphy to play tackle. On defense, edge Kendrick Falk and corner Kalen Lee anchor the defense as solid returning pieces. And, Coach Hugh Freeze's portal strategy adds experience and star power, something that they sorely needed last year. Their 2025 schedule includes an early test against a solid Baylor team, then the SEC games against Georgia, Mizzou, Texas A&M, and Bama to highlight. This schedule will definitely test their revamped roster, but it's not the hardest in the world either. My main concerns with this team are, will Arnold pan out, because it starts and ends at quarterback, and how will the interior O-line play, and can they defend against the pass? If Arnold delivers and the defense gels, Auburn could surprise the big dogs and maybe crash some playoff conversation. Okay, now at number 8, halfway through now, Florida is here at number 8. The Florida Gators, their number 8 ranking here is driven by their late 2024 surge and young talent. Finishing 7-5 with a bowl win, the Gators showed promise for the first time in a couple years under Billy Napier, with quarterback DJ Lagway emerging as a star. Returning production is top 20 nationally, with wide receivers they got this wide receiver in J. Michael Studevant and Eugene Wilson III complement Lagway tremendously. They were dead last in the SEC in the portal as they got next to no one except for Studevart. Plus, they lost a lot, which is why I am lower on the Gators as some might feel, but I feel like number 8's justified. They lost TJ Searcy and Jack Pyburn and Kelby Tomlins, all three guys starters on the defensive line, plus Jakeem Jackson to the portal. Excuse me, they lost him to the portal. The wide receiver room is full of aliens, most notably of which Dallas Wilson, the true freshman. What's been coming out with him? He is elite, and he's going to get a lot of reps. And Eugene Wilson III obviously is great as well. Defensively, I really like defensive end Tyreek Sapp, but I think it's a weaker room after the portal losses. Linebacker solid, and in the back end, they have a great safety duo in Jordan Castle and Bryce Thornton. Their 2025 schedule is brutal yet again, featuring Miami, LSU, Texas, and Texas A&M right off the bat, then Georgia, Ole Miss, and Tennessee to finish the year. Those are the highlights, not the full schedule, by the way. Florida's upset win over LSU highlights their potential, last year. Their win over LSU last year highlights their potential, but heavy portal losses hurt them, in my opinion. They need the defense to improve for an improvement from last season. Plus, I love Lagway's upside, but his TD to INT ratio is nearly 1-1, and he personally definitely needs to improve his game. If Napier maximizes returning talent, Florida could surprise, as I think that they have a fairly high ceiling with the talent that they have. Up next, we got the Texas A&M Aggies. Mike Elko's first year in 2024 stabilized A&M after the turbulent Jimbo Fisher era with a strong defense and improved discipline. Not improvised, excuse me. He has put together an elite coaching staff, especially at OC with Colin Klein. Speaking of the offense, quarterback Marcel Reed has the talent, but needs to prove that he is a competent quarterback in the SEC. Portal additions were key here as well, reloading especially at wide receiver with Casey Concepcion from NC State, Mario Crafer from Mississippi State, and Jonah Wilson from Houston. Completely redid that room. I really like it. In addition to those wide receivers, they added multiple 4-stars for the defensive line in Tyler Onyedim and TJ Searcy. Coupled with a tough physical run game headed by running back Le'Veon Moss, the Aggies should have a pretty darn good team, pretty darn good offense. Having the experienced coaching staff headed by the aforementioned Elko and Klein is key to success. Their 2025 schedule includes an important non-con game at Notre Dame, then an SEC play against the likes of LSU, South Carolina, and Texas. It's a pretty tough schedule. Overall, it's kind of light compared to the rest of the SEC, which really says something about them. And that's something that they can take advantage of. Texas A&M's portal activity was aggressive, addressing the skill position needs, but defensive losses temper expectations. The Aggies' talent and SEC pedigree justify this spot here, even if they are not part of the elite yet. But I have questions at quarterback and on defense. Moving on, at number 6, we have the Ole Miss Rebels. I think that Lane Kiffin, due to some transfer portal magic, I think that they're going to be just as good as they were last season. I think that they have the potential to be just as good as they were last season. This portal class was headed by players such as Deshaun Womack, De'Zhaun Stribling, Deuce Alexander, and Harrison Wallace. Quarterback, however, will be a question mark for them as 3-year starter Jackson Dart left for the NFL, and they did not find a suitable replacement in the portal, so the Rebs are going with redshirt sophomore Austin Simmons to carry the load. I think he's a great playmaker with the ball, but passing and accuracy may be a struggle. But perhaps not as so, because Ole Miss has too many wide receivers. In the 6 deep, any of the top 6 guys in that wide receiver room are capable of starting at any power program. From incumbent Caden Lee to they got 5 4-star transfers in De'Zhaun Stribling, Harrison Wallace, Traylon Ray, Caleb Odom, and Deuce Alexander. It's a loaded room. The offense, in my opinion, will be fine, as the offensive line was already good, then got a couple big-time transfers as well. One thing, the offense that I don't really trust is their running back room, although I feel like Simmons will carry the load on the ground. The defense, led by running back Sertain Perkins, remains a strength, though replacing Walter Nolan's production is critical. I have questions about the secondary, as they had to replace most all of it, and the replacements are all transfers, so that always gives me pause when you have a whole room made up of transfers who had just met each other, a couple months ago. The 2025 schedule includes Georgia, South Carolina, and LSU. Overall, I think that the Rebels are set up for success in 2025. Will they make the playoff? Right now, I say no, but it is not out of the picture at all, as I do have them in my top 25. I think like 16 or 17, somewhere in there. Their ability to integrate transfers will determine if they can exceed expectations, in my opinion. Okay, so now we have LSU at number 5. LSU's 2024 season may have been a step back after the Jaden Daniels era, but Brian Kelly's recruiting prowess ensures that talent is not an issue. Quarterback Garrett Nussmeier staying is a huge plus, and a reloaded defense could stabilize the Tigers. Having their number 1 overall transfer portal class is definitely a plus. Getting many blue chip prospects, I can't even attempt to name them all, but players that I think will have an instant impact would be players such as Tamarcus Cooley, Patrick Payton, Jack Pyburn, Barian Brown, and Nick Anderson, among many more. The defense revamped under new coordinator Corey Barton includes all SEC players such as linebackers Greg Penn III and Harold Perkins, plus corner Zy Alexander. However, their 2024 pass defense struggles, they let by 255 yards through the air per game, raise concerns. Their 2025 schedule includes Clemson early and in SEC play, Ole Miss, South Carolina, and Bama, those being highlights of the schedule, of course. The big problem I have with this team is that head coach. I'm really not a fan of Brian Kelly. I think he's been dragging LSU down ever since he's been there. I don't think, outside of being a recruiter, he's not that great at maximizing the talent that he has. For crying out loud, he had Garrett Nussmeier and 2 first-round wide receivers. They had Jaden Daniels, They had Jaden Daniels and 2 first-round wide receivers on the roster. They had 3 first-round picks at the skill positions, and they could only win like 9 games. I mean, it's really, and yes, blame the defense, but the defense is his problem too. He's the overseer of everything, and I think that a lot of the blame goes on him. And if they don't get to expectations, which I'm sure is making the playoff, double-digit wins, etc., this season, I think he's on the hot seat now. I think he'll be even more on the hot seat nationally if they don't perform this season. And I just don't see the advantage of having him as head coach. I think it weighs them down. Nevertheless, they have the ceiling to be one of the best team in the SEC, absolutely, with the roster that they've assembled, and if Brian Kelly ups his coaching. I'm just taking a more cautious approach to this Tigers team. All right, coming in at number 4, I have the Alabama Crimson Tide. Kalen DeBoer's first year in 2024 was a rocky, inconsistent one, going 9-4, winning the games that they were not favored in, like the Georgia game, and losing the games that they absolutely should have won. Let's go to Michigan. Let's go to Vanderbilt. Let's go to Oklahoma, etc. Need I say more? Though this past season was not at Saban era dominance, it still set the groundwork for DeBoer and co going forward. Obviously, you have Jalen Milroe gone, as is much of the roster. They lost many capable starters, such as tackle Elijah Pritchett, wide receiver Kendrick Law, and running back Justin Haynes, among others. Among players returning, Bray Hubbard and Keon Sapp are they're probably the best safety duo in the country, and right there with Ohio State's duo, and that's a huge plus in the secondary. They added pieces such as true freshman Keelan Russell, who will contend for the starting job with incumbent Ty Simpson. They also added wide receiver Isaiah Horton from Miami, defensive lineman Kelby Collins from Florida, linebacker Nikhai Hell-Green from Colorado, and corner Cameron Calhoun from Utah, who should all play significant snaps. 2025 Bama should compete for greatness. This is year 2 of Kalen DeBoer's tenure here. They got OC Ryan Grubb, the old OC from that Kalen DeBoer had at Washington. Ryan Grubb, I think, is a really good OC, probably a top 10 OC in the country, and that should really help them out. Their 2024 schedule includes tough matchups against South Carolina, Georgia, and LSU, but their defensive continuity and recruiting edge, and it keeps them elite. While QB Ty Simpson may not be the best quarterback that Bama has had over the years, he isn't bad. I just think that he has a limited ceiling. And if they start a true freshman, that's a whole nother can of worms to open up. That's not going to be in this video. But Alabama's talent and coaching ensures that they remain a playoff contender here at number 4. Okay, at number 3 here, we have the South Carolina Gamecocks. Shane Beamer's 2024 season was a breakout. Quarterback Lenore Sellers is a rising star. He returns to lead the offense with wide receiver Nick Harbor as his go-to guy. A ferocious defense last season, I think, will carry over big time as they still have Brian Thomas Jr. returning. They had a great portal class that ended up being top 15, stacking up the defensive line, getting Gabriel Brownlow Dindy and Xavier Hardy. Shoring up the interior offensive line was key as well, getting Nick Sharp, Boaz Stanley, and Rodney Newsom Jr. Some concerns I have with this team is Lenore Sellers' accuracy and decision making. If that improves, I think that they could disguise the limit. And my other question is if Nick Harbor is truly ready to be a true number one. At at number 3 here, top 3 team. They're a true contender for the playoff and a true contender for the SEC title. The 2025 schedule includes challenging games such as LSU, Texas A&M, Alabama, and Clemson at the end of the season. But Shane Beamer's staff with new OC Mike Shula adds strategic depth. While not as stacked with overall talent as Texas or Georgia, South Carolina's momentum, key transfers, and Sellers' potential puts them right in line for a run at the SEC title, justifying their higher ranking despite some roster gaps. Okay, now I have at number 2 the Georgia Bulldogs. Kirby Smart's 2024 team fell short of a title but remained elite with quarterback Carson Beck and a top defense. They will not have the luxury of an elite quarterback, however, because Beck transferred and they will have to rely on the backup gunner Stockton. They did add to the receiver room in the portal, which was desperately needed via Noah Thomas from Texas A&M and Zachariah Branch from USC, who are both studs. Having returners such as Nate Frazier, Oscar Delp, and KJ Bolden, while players such as Christian Miller, I think, will break out big time on that defensive line. Their schedule is one of the harder ones as they have to play Bama, Texas, Ole Miss, and Georgia Tech. I have my questions at quarterback, and that's why they're 2 and number 1, because number 1 does not have questions at quarterback. That would be Texas, if you haven't figured that out. Their coaching staff is top 10 yet again, as Kirby keeps doing his thing. Does this Georgia team have the makings of the juggernaut they were the past couple years? No, not in my opinion, but this roster is talented enough with the best head coach in football, and when you got that, you got everything going for you. They just get a couple dominoes to bounce their way, couple balls to bounce their way, and I think that they're right there as one of the top teams in the country. Okay, so now we have at the conclusion of the video here at number 1, saving the best for last, Texas Longhorns are here at number 1. Steve Sarkisian's 2024 team was incredibly close to getting to the big dance yet again, but failed. This summer, I think that they are the number 1 team down south for a couple reasons. I think that they upgraded a quarterback with Arch Manning. They retooled on the defensive line, getting Travis Shaw from North Carolina and Cole Brevard from Purdue. They boast a nasty wide receiver room, which returns players such as Ryan Wingo and DeAndre Moore, but they also bring in 2 5-star plus talented players in Jamie French and Khalil Lockett. And both those players will get meaningful snaps. Believe me, they are flat out studs. And this wide receiver room is one of the best in the country, by the way, if you haven't got that yet. Coupled with Q Wisner and CJ Baxter coming back fully healthy, that running back room right there is elite. This Texas team is one of the most talented out there defensively. Texas retains edge Colin Simmons, linebacker Anthony Hill Jr., and DB Michael Taffy, among many others that return. I think all of them contribute to a unit that was ranked among the SEC's best last season, and I think will continue to be the SEC's best. With elite talent, depth, and momentum, Texas is my number 1 team going into this summer here, a program firing on all cylinders. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, we're a relatively small channel here, and we're trying to build up our brand here. I'd love to get some of you fans from down south to become a part of this College Football 360 family and really start to watch the videos, commenting your thoughts. I respond to every comment that's in good faith. The trolls, what can we say about them? But I think that you guys should really subscribe to the channel. It would help me out tremendously making my videos. I do this all for free, all the graphics, all the editing, everything I do by myself. So I would really appreciate it if you guys subscribed. Without further ado, I'll let you get on with your day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.